Hello. Good evening, students. Hello. Philip, Jahannath. Good evening. So, good evening, students.
Good evening, ma'am.
Shall we start or we'll wait for another 5 minutes? Five. So, right, we'll start and let them join, right? So today our topic is issues of language in education, right? So these issues, right? We are thinking we have in Sri Lanka only, but each and every country is facing this problem, issues of language. Right. So read this learning outcomes. So after completing this lesson, you will be able to do these things. Identify different types of minorities. Trace the change of attitude that has taken place in the world in general regarding the linguistic right of minorities. So normally the language issues are with minorities. Explain the importance for a nation to develop its language policy. Describe the evolution of different language policies in selected countries. Evaluate merits and demerits of different policies related to the education of linguistic minority children in selected countries. And evaluate the national language policy adopted by Sri Lanka regarding its adequacy to meet the needs of individual minority groups and the nation as a whole. So these are the outcomes of lesson, right? So I think in your module, they have put the outcomes in the last page, right? But anyway, as a session, right, we have to know the outcomes of this lesson. These are the things we are expecting you to know, right? So, and this lesson is related to minorities, right? In somewhat, we are also minority in our country, right? So we are also facing language issues, right? So here in this module, they have selected a few countries. So we are going to see what are the problem and issues of language in those countries, right? So first of all, we have to know regarding the minorities, because we are going to talk about minorities of each country, the selected countries. And we know this word, it's a very familiar word for us, right? So minorities in a country can refer to groups that differ from the majority population in terms of ethnicity, religion, culture, language, or other social characteristic, right? So can you tell me what are the minorities in Sri Lanka? Can you name one or two?
What did you ask, ma'am?
Yes,
What did you ask, ma'am?
minorities in Sri Lanka.
Tamil people.
Minority groups in Sri Lanka.
Tamils, Muslims.
Tamil, ma'am.
Yes, Tamil, Muslim, Malay, Burgher, right? Those are the, so under Tamil, there are categories, right? Anyway, those are the minority groups in Sri Lanka, right? So we'll see in other countries, selected countries, what are the minorities? So what are the problems they faced due to the minority or the language issues, right? So if someone asks, what is minority, you'll be able to answer. That means in any country can refer to groups that differ from the majority population, right? So in Sri Lanka, Sinhala people are the majority population. Other than that, the other groups will be categorized as minorities, right? So in terms of ethnicity, religion, culture, language, or other social characteristics. Right. So in Canada, indigenous people. Who is indigenous people? Who are the indigenous people in Sri Lanka? Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's raining here, that's what I ask you all. Okay, so indigenous people. So each and every country have these type of people. Native people. Right, so in Canada, indigenous people, ethnic minorities. So ethnic minorities are Chinese, Indian, Filipino, Syrian. So religious minorities are Muslim, Hindu, Sikhs, right? And they are talking about language, talking by them, right? So we have to understand what is indigenous people. So they are the native people of that country, right? But those indigenous people are the minority of each country, and they are having lot of language issues, right? So we'll see what it is. And in Australia, indigenous people, of course, Aborigines, immigrant communities, Asian, European, religious minorities, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindus. In France, North African and Sub-Saharan African communities, Muslim, Romani people, and United Kingdom, in United Kingdom, South Asian, African, and Caribbean communities, Muslims, gypsies and travelers. United States, African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, religious minorities, immigrants. Right? So, here in this, right? So this point is not needed. So why they are having language issues? That is another question, right? So why these people have language issues? Think of us. Are we having any language issues? So I think more 10 years back, right? Not 10 years, more than that. At that time, we are scared to speak in Tamil, right? So that situation is such. And in Sri Lanka, of course, we have Tamil schools, Sinhala schools, and now, of course, international schools are available. So in international school, all the multi-ethnic people are there, right? So in such schools, I think the ethnicity, they are not carrying all those things, right? All are together. They are studying together, right? And they will keep the friendship to forever, right? Even before 1959, the same situation in Sri Lanka, because under English medium, all the ethnic groups were studied, right? So each country has a different history and social structure, but many minority groups face similar challenges around issues of discrimination, right? Even this word is also very familiar to us, right? Similar challenges around issues of discrimination, representation, and integration, right? So when the population is less, right? So the major population will have more benefits than the minorities. The percentage will be like that, right? After that, we are talking about language issues, no? Right? So every country is having a language policy. So even our neighbor country, India, or any other countries, especially if it is a multi-ethnic country, they have to have language policy. So language policy means it's a set of laws, regulations, practices, and principles that govern the use, teaching, and promotion of languages within a specific country, region, or community. Right? So even in Sri Lanka also we have language policy, right? We'll see that later. So, so the language, if there are a lot of languages, they have to control, they have to have a language policy. It involves decision made by governments, institutions, or organizations about which languages are to be used in various domains, such as education, government, media, and public life. Right, so now these mediums are decided by schools. We are going to have English medium, we are going to have Sinhala medium, we are going to have Tamil medium. And some schools, they have only primary classes with mother tongue. And after that, they are switched on to English medium. And some schools, they have trilingual, 3 medias are there. So, according to institutions, it will change, but the whole picture, that means the government is formulating policies. So single institutions can't formulate policies, right? So language policy can be broadly categorized into the following areas. That means official language policy. So this determines which language are recognized as official for purposes like legislation, administration, and public service. So these multinational companies, they are using English as a office language. They are everything done by English. Right? Some government office mostly using Sinhala language, right? But there are places where they have to use the other languages also, right? So, for example, right, in India, Hindi and English are official languages, while various regional languages are recognized at the state level. So official languages already decided by the government, right? But to satisfy the people, minority people, various regional languages are recognized at the state level. Right? So the state level, they have their own language. So language education policy, so normally India, Telugu, Malayalam, Hindi. Hindi, of course, official language, no? And there are a lot of languages, no? Right? Kannada. So state level, they are using that language. So that is also recognized. So language education policy, these refer to decisions about which languages are taught in schools, how they are taught, and to what extent multilingualism is encouraged. Right, so recently when they are start English medium again, so the bilingual education concept came, right? Because all of a sudden they can't switch on the mother from the children from the mother tongue to English, so they have bilingual education, and then they will start the whole thing in English, right? Even in the universities also, right? They are using mother tongue plus English, right? So bilingual. So so transition period will be there, right? So some children will pick up very quickly and some children will take more time, right? So here, how they are taught and to what extent multilingualism is encouraged. For example, some countries prioritize bilingual education while others focus on national or official language. And the other part is language planning. So language planning involves deliberate efforts to influence the structure of function of a language or group of language. This might include efforts to standardize a language, to promote the use of national language, or to revitalize endangered language. So, so English medium means no problem because every ethnic group have to study in English. English is the official language in that place. So maybe the ethnic group will learn their mother tongue as a second national language, right? So here, promote the use of national language or to revitalize endangered languages. So another thing, language rights. So we have to have right to speak in our mother tongue. Right? So language policy may also address the rights of speakers of minority or indigenous languages, ensuring they can use their language in public life, education, and other areas. Right? So, that's what we call ethnicity. Right? So we born to Tamil parents, so we are speaking Tamil. That is our language. Sinhalese speaking Sinhala because their language is Sinhala, right? So in Sri Lanka, of course, not much complex, right? The languages, of course, Sinhala, English, Tamil, there are 3 languages. Religion, of course, different, right? For instance, some countries have professions that allow minority language speakers to use their language in courts or government proceedings. Multilingualism and translation. And so you would have experience, right? So our national anthem, right? So in Sinhala, Tamil, right? Mostly. Mostly use the most of the ceremonies or any other thing, we can see only the Sinhala national anthem is displaying, right? So, at that time, so the people will have a small that means effect, right? So why can't they play in Tamil also? In that way they will think, because so nowadays, of course, the recent government, so the president speech says that every language, their mother tongue, and they are giving rights for that, it seems, right? So we have already experiences, and also in each and every country have problem because of these languages, because different languages, different ethnics. So multi-ethnic countries only having this type of problems. So multilingualism and translation, some countries have policies that promotes multilingualism and translation services, allowing citizens to engage with government services, media, and education in multiple languages, right? Even in our country, right, in Tamil regions, the birth certificate will be in Tamil. Sinhala region, birth certificate will be in Sinhala. If you want to migrate, you have to translate all into English, right? So those things are there. And examples of language policy in practice. So here sees in some countries, in Switzerland, there are 4 official languages, right? So in Sri Lanka, we have 2, but in Switzerland, Swiss, there are 4 official languages: German, French, Italian, and Romansh. So the country's language policy promotes multilingualism and ensures equal representation of this language in public life. So that means these 4 language people are representing in that country. So they are giving rights for them to use that language as official language, right, in Switzerland. In Canada, English and French are both official languages. with the policy aimed at promoting bilingualism, especially in federal government services. Right? So policy aimed at promoting bilingualism. Right? So they are promoting bilingualism. In South Africa, right? So South Africa, so last time we learned about apathy, right? So how cruel they are at that time. But now see, there are 11 official languages reflecting the country's multicultural population and emphasizing the equal treatment of various linguistic groups. So see the transition. Right now they have changed and they are respecting multi-ethnic situations, and the 11 official languages are there. And language policies can have profound social, cultural, and political implications, influencing national identity, social cohesion, and the rights of linguistic minorities. So even in Sri Lanka, right, they are saying the political people only creating problem among these ethnic people, ethnicity, right? So other than that, people are, if the people are living together, you just see in the foreign countries, right? Our Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim, Christian people, these are living as migrants, right? But they are very close and they are very united. So they are thinking only that they are Sri Lankans, right? So language policies can have profound social, cultural, and political implications, influencing national identity, social cohesion, and rights of linguistic minorities. And to see our national policy, right? Education policy. There are 9 policies. So one policy is national, social cohesion and national integration, right? Right. So official languages in our country, right? A majority language, Sinhala, and Tamil minority language. So with both languages having equal status in government and public services. So historical context, right? So there are different language policies, right? So Sinhala only Act of 1956 made Sinhala the sole official language, which led to ethnic tensions. The amendment in 1987 granted Tamil equal status as an official language to ensure linguistic right for Tamil-speaking communities. So, language in practice in Sri Lanka, Sinhala dominates in government and public life in Sinhala majority regions, while Tamil is more commonly used in Tamil majority regions. English serves as a link language in business, education, and legal context. This is the language practice in Sri Lanka. And post-war reconciliation. After war, right? After the Civil War, the language policy has been a key element in the reconciliation process with efforts to ensure equal access to services and opportunities for both Sinhala and Tamil speakers. Right? After the Civil War, the language policy has been a key element in reconciliation process, which efforts to ensure equal access to service and opportunities for both Sinhala and Tamil speakers. So what are the challenges we face? The main challenges related to the practical implementation of the language policy, especially in areas outside the Tamil majority regions and in the context of national unity and post-conflict recovery. Right? So in Tamil regions, all the things are done in mother tongue, right? And the other regions, they are conducting all these activities in their language, right? So the English is a linked language. So read this conclusion regarding official language policy. So Canada, they have official two languages, English, French, but they are using bilingualism to connect those at the national level with special protection for indigenous languages. Australia, there's no official language, but English is the de facto language, refers to preserve indigenous languages. France, French is the sole official language. Minority regional language have no official status, though preservation efforts exist. UK, no official language, but English dominates. Welsh and Scottish Gaelic have official status in Wales and Scotland, respectively. So United States, no official language, but English is the dominant language. Spanish has a significant presence, especially in certain states. India, Hindi and English are official languages. States have their official language, and there is significant linguistic diversity and protection for regional languages. So when we are talking about language policies, each and every country language policy reflects its unique historical, cultural, and social context, balancing the interest of linguistic majorities and minorities according to the population, and responding to the challenges posed by migration, regionalism, and globalization. So this is the Sri Lankan language policy. Sri Lankan language policy reflects its complex ethnic makeup and historical struggles, particularly between the Sinhalese and Tamil communities. The country's official bilingual status for Sinhala and Tamil, along with the significant role of English. Right? Sinhala, Tamil, English. Those are the three languages we have. Attempts to balance linguistic right and promote national unity. However, Challenges related to the equitable use of these language, especially outside Tamil majority areas, continue to shape the ongoing discussion around language and identity in Sri Lanka. So this is the Sri Lankan language policy. Guys, that official language is Sinhala and Tamil. But Tamil areas are doing everything in Tamil, but the other areas will be doing in the other official language. So still we have barriers and also gaps between those two languages. And Sri Lankan minority groups. So in Sri Lanka, several minority groups make a smaller proportion of the population compared to the majority Sinhalese ethnic group. Some of the key minority groups in Sri Lanka, Tamils. The Tamil population is the largest ethnic minority in Sri Lanka, making up around 15 to 20% of the total population. Tamils are primarily found in the northern and eastern province of the country. There are two main subgroups. Sri Lankan Tamils, indigenous to Sri Lanka. They are mostly concentrated in northern and eastern regions. Indian Tamils, descendants of Tamil laborers brought to Sri Lanka during British colonial rule to work on plantation primarily in the central highlands. So the 15 to 20% Tamil population is Sri Lankan Tamils and Indian Tamils. So 80% of the people are the majority Sinhalese. And the other group is Muslim, known locally as Sri Lankan Moors. Muslim make up about 10 to 11% of the population. They are spread across the island with significant population in the eastern and western provinces. They speak Tamil or Sinhala, depending on their region, but are united by their religion, Islam. Right? The other minority is Burghers, the group of mixed European, mostly Portuguese, Dutch, and British, and Sri Lanka ancestry. Right, earlier we ruled by, the Sri Lankans ruled by British, right, Portuguese, Dutch, right, so that mixture. They are a small community comprising less than 1% of the population. So the Burghers have historically been concentrated in urban areas such as Colombo and have contributed significantly to Sri Lanka's culture, especially in areas like music and literature. The other minority, right? Not only minority, our indigenous people are Vedas. The indigenous people of Sri Lanka, the Veda community make up a very small portion of the population, and their numbers have been greatly reduced due to his historical assimilation and displacement. They primarily live in rural areas, particularly in the central and eastern parts of Sri Lanka. Right, so I heard in Ampara district, right, the Telugu people also living in, so they are speaking different language than our three languages. So these are the Sri Lankan minorities. Tamils, 15 to 20%, 10 to 11% Muslims, Burghers 1%, right? Vedas, they didn't mention the percentage, very less population, but they are the indigenous people of Sri Lanka. So in this point, right, the indigenous people, Vedas, will speak a different type of Sinhalese. Their pronunciation and they are using different accent, right? So you'd have heard that, right? So the Vedda community leader used to speak in this in TV, right? So you'd have heard. So those are the minorities in Sri Lanka. And there are other minority groups, right? There are also smaller communities, including those of Malays, Chinese, and other South Asian descent, though their number are relatively few. So these groups contribute to the rich cultural diversity of Sri Lanka. And the island's history has been shaped by the interactions, conflicts, and cooperation among these different communities. So, so Sri Lanka got the freedom in 1948. Before that, a lot of foreign countries captured time to time. So at that time, the Sri Lankan people mixed with them, and the Burgher, Malay, that type of very few percentage people are there. So that is also our diverse. It shows that we have a diverse cultural. The majority Sinhalese, about 75% of the population, and minority Tamils have been central to the ethnic and political landscape, with the Tamils in particular having been at the center of Sri Lankan civil war. 3 decades civil war we had from 1983 to 2009. So the next topic in your module is bilingual education in the United States. So under language policies, language issues, right? So the Canadian people have 2 official language, but they are having bilingualism, right? But now we are going to see what type of language policy is available in United States, because the selected countries were United States and Russia, Australia, right? Those are the 3 countries selected by your program. So the first one is United States, right? So bilingual education in the United States refer to teaching academic content in 2 languages, right? So this bilingual education is in Sri Lanka also, right? So when the children, singular student is going to English medium, so they are using Sinhala and English. Students are going to learn English, Tamil students who are going to learn English means in that class, they will use Tamil and English, right? So the students' native language often referred to as their home language and English, right? The primary goal of bilingual education is to ensure that students who are English language learners or who speak other languages at home are able to acquire both proficiency in English and a strong academic foundation in other subjects such as math, science, and social studies. Right, so that bilingual education is there. Our students learn religion, history, and mother tongue, right? Those 3 they learn in mother tongue. Other subjects they are learning in English. So their mother tongue and English are using. So that type of education is called bilingual education. So the key features of bilingual education in US, United States. So 2-way immersion, dual language. So 2-way immersion programs are designed to benefit both English-speaking students and non-English-speaking students. In these programs, students are taught in both English and the home language, with the goal of fostering bilingualism and biliteracy for all students. So US also using bilingual education because it is also a multi-ethnic country. And I think most of the migrants are there. So they are treating well, right? For example, a class may have a mix of native English speakers and native Spanish speakers, and both groups would learn in both languages, right? So it is not an easy thing, right? If in a class, there are 3-4 language speakers are there, so they have to learn in that subject and as well as English, right? That is two-way immersion, dual language. Other feature, transitional bilingual education. So in transitional bilingual education, also known as early exit program, students initially receive instruction in their home language while they are gradually immersed in English. So this is what our universities also follows, because now they have started the international school again, but before that, right, only Sinhala medium and English medium students are coming to the university. So in the university, only arts faculty is using mother tongue. Other than that, all the faculties are using English. They can't learn medicine in Tamil or Sinhala because there's no books, right? But in Japan, I think they are translating all the books and they are learning in their own mother tongue. But here it is not possible because especially medicine, dental, veterinary, agriculture, biological sciences, management, right? So those streams, right, are in English. Right, so now mother tongue, those who are learned in mother tongue up to 13 years only going to enter the university. So at that time, they have this transitional bilingual education program. For the first semester, they will use both languages, right? So especially not, they have to use 3 languages. That means Sinhala and Tamil, English, right? So slowly they are moving to English. So from second year, they're not going to use mother tongue. They have to use English, right? That is the setup in universities, right? So the goal is to transition students into full English language instruction as quickly as possible, typically within 1 to 3 years. These programs are often used with children who speak languages such as Spanish, Chinese, or Vietnamese, with the home language used as bridge to understanding content until the student is proficient in English. Right? So, in the first year, right? So most of the university students coming from rural area, so you can see the differences. Urban schools, students can speak English and they can work in English. But the rural side, 1 or 2 schools, exceptional schools are there, even in rural area. So, so I saw once they came to this Japanese program to Colombo. To Nelumpokuna, there is a Japan program, and they invited us also. So we went in that one Kurunagala incident. That means it's like a case study. They showed that one master from Kurunagala, very interior school, very village type school, but that master tried. That means from 5:30 to 7:30, he's teaching English for students. And after 1:30 to 4:30, speaking classes. And this implemented different type of strategies for children. That means huts were made, and so inside the hut, only English have to speak. So in that way, so those children can converse in English very fluently. So the parents also highly helping that event. Principal also very supportive. So that's exceptional, right? Other than that, the urban school children can understand the lectures very well if they are delivering in English. So the students from rural area can't understand anything because they can't understand English. So that's what the bilingual system starts, right? So they thought for the transition period, right? So they are using bilingual. So in US also, they are doing transitional bilingual education, but they are saying within 1 to 3 years. But in Sri Lanka, they are not giving that much time, only 1 semester or 2 semesters. And they will give the exam papers in 2 languages, mother tongue and the English. So, but anyway, they have to answer in English. So these programs are often used with children who speak languages, different languages, mother tongue, to familiarize. Right. So maintenance bilingual education in US. In maintenance bilingual education, also called late exit program, the focus on maintaining the developing fluency in both the home language and English over a longer period. These programs typically last longer than transitional programs and aim to foster full bilingualism and biliteracy. So this type of program is more likely to be found in communities with a significant number of students who speak the same home language, Spanish in areas with many Latin students, right? So that bilingual thing, so my son and his friends, right? He studied at Trinity College, Kandy. So that friends, when they entered to Peradeniya University, so these rural area students, so that school children are very helpful, right? So all the village students are closely seated to that's Trinity students, and request them to explain in mother tongue. So, so these students, I think in my son's class, 4, 5 students entered the university. So all students, that 4, 5 get together and they will discuss with the other students. So I think they have that friendship until now, right? Later they picked up the English language. So that it shows that they must have some time to pick up the language, because 13 years they learn under mother tongue. All of a sudden, they can't change. That means that's what that concept came, bilingual education. So English as a second language program, although not strictly bilingual education, English second language programs are another form of language support for ELLS. And English unit is there in every university, and they are giving English training for the students. I think beforehand, right? So if the list is ready, that means the students who are going to enter the university will have 3 months prior this program, English as a second language program will be there, right? Even in our campus, they are having 3 months program and giving a certificate also, issuing a certificate. So then they will get the confidence to speak and attend to lectures. So in these programs, students are taught in English, but often with additional language support, and especially design materials to help them learn both the language and the academic content. So some schools offer ESL alongside other forms of bilingual education, especially in the early stage of language acquisition. Right. So, the bilingual education is something different, right? You're using mother tongue as well as English, but English as a second language means you're learning English, right? So they're teaching English to you, simple English to you to understand and continue the degree program. And the historical context of US. Historical bilingual education in the US has been shaped by debates over language, culture, and national identity. Several important milestones laid include early 20th century, bilingual education began in response to the large number of immigrants coming to the US in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So why they started the bilingual education? Because of the immigrants, right? They are coming from other countries and their language is different. At that time, bilingual education was more common in some communities, especially in areas with large German, Italian, or Spanish-speaking population. Right? So why people are not not migrate to German and Russia? Because they have to learn in that language, German. So if you are going to German, you have to learn German, and the degree will be in German, right? Russia also the same. You have to learn the language first, and you have to do the degree. Here, especially in areas with large German, Italian, or Spanish-speaking population, but these people are, if they are coming to states, US, right? So they are using bilingual policy. However, the emphasis was generally of Americanization, and over time, policies favored English-only instruction. So why people are migrating and they are preferring UK, Australia, and US? Because the instructions, medium of instruction is in English. So in 1960 to 70, the civil rights movement and the bilingual education advocacy led to the recognition that non-English speaking students were being disadvantaged in school setting. So this resulted in the passing of the Bilingual Education Act of 1968. So if they don't know anything regarding English, how can they do the learning part? So that's what they imposed this Bilingual Education Act of 1968, which provided federal funds to support bilingual education program. So Bilingual Education Act aimed to improve the educational opportunities for students with limited English proficiency and acknowledge the importance of preserving native languages, right? So when English medium the starting point of English medium in Sri Lanka, this bilingual education system, that content is very popular. And I think the ministry had a separate branch for that bilingual department. And they gave lot of training for teachers, right? Because there are no English subject teachers in English, no, right? Only English teachers are there. So to the other teachers, they gave bilingual training. And in 1980 to 1990, historical events, right? The rise of English only movements. Now they are talking about, they wanted to have English only, right? The rise of English only movements in the 1980 and 1990, for example, Proposition 227 in California in 1998 led to debates about whether bilingual education should be a priority. So critics argued that it delayed English acquisition and kept students from integrating into mainstream society. Right, so in a way, this is true, right? Because we also experience in our campus. So when they are coming, we have English medium only, right? For the Bachelor of Education degree program. Those who are entering, right? They know that they have to learn in English because the medium of instruction is English. So at least they have to have a C pass in English. With the C pass even, they find it very difficult in the early stage. And sometimes they used to request to explain in mother tongue. Right? If they can't understand that professional subject, sometimes they used to ask to explain in English, the mother tongue, right? In my class, right? So as I'm a Tamil one, they never asked me to explain in Sinhala, right? But all the other Sinhala lecturers will help a little bit. They will explain in Sinhala also, right? But right, when they started to teach in Sinhala, they feel comfortable and continuously they request to explain in Sinhala. So they are losing the proficiency in English. But they have to do the exams in English. They have to write the answers in English. Right? So this is somewhat true. The critics argued that it delayed English acquisition and kept students from integrating into mainstream society. So supporters of bilingual education countered that it helped students succeed academically and maintain their cultural identity. Right? So we can see the students, we can see the changes, transition, right? From the first semester, the exam papers are horrible. We can't understand what they have written, right? But in the second semester, it will be better. Third semester, far more better, right? Fourth, fifth, sixth semester, they can converse in English very well. They can present very well, and they can write the English also without any mistakes. So that means if we are try to teach in mother tongue, what will happen? They are comfortable in the mother tongue, so they don't want to learn English. So that is also not good. The No Child Left Behind Act 2001. Bill Clinton only imposed this No Child Left Behind Act. Further shifted federal education policy emphasizing standardized testing and accountability, which affected now bilingual education programs were evaluated. Right, and 2000s present, 2000 up to present year in US. In recent years, there has been a push of dual language immersion programs as research has shown that bilingualism has cognitive, academic, and social benefits. These programs are more likely to be offered in areas with diverse population, such as urban centers with large Latins, Asian, or indigenous communities. In Sri Lanka also mostly the immersion program or bilingual education is mostly needed for rural area students. A growing recognition of the value of bilingualism for global competitiveness has also influenced a resurgence of interest in bilingual education. And we can see, right, those, we have these loan scheme students, right? So loan scheme students means, right, so the government is giving loan for them for 8 lakhs. I think up to 11 lakhs, 8 plus 3, 8 for education and 3 for maintenance. Ministry of Education will select these loan scheme students from different areas. That means mostly the village students as well as urban students also can apply. So in that we can see these language barriers, right? Language issues. So sometimes they will lose their first class, even though they are very bright, they will lose the first class because of their language. Because first semester, they used to achieve lower results because of language, right? So we can see the differences, right, from urban students and weekend students. We have weekend students. They are direct students, right? So they are live closely to Colombo. So they will find very easy to study in English, right? Direct, so they don't have any problem. But these loan scheme students have problem and they are giving special English classes like whatever we learned up to now. The immersion program will be there, right, for 3 months. And from that only, they gain the language proficiency. So growing recognition of the value of bilingualism for global competitiveness has also influenced the regional sense of interest in bilingual education. At the same time, there is still considerable variation in bilingual education policies across states, as educational control is decentralized in the US, with states and local districts determining the specifics of language problem. So after 2000, they have made some changes in the policies. Right. So legal and policy framework. So these are the legal things related to language. While there is no national mandate for bilingual education in the US, federal and state laws shape how bilingual education is implemented. So there are three legal acts. The Equal Education Opportunities Act of 1974. So the law mandates that school must take appropriate action to help non-English speaking students overcome language barriers so they can participate meaningfully in instructional programs. To help non-English speaking students, this act is helping. And Love v. Nicholas, 1974, the landmark Supreme Court decision established that schools must provide language assistance to students who are not proficient in English to ensure they have an equal opportunity to participate in public education. This decision was central to the expansion of bilingual education programs in the 1970s and 1980s. Right, so one example, right? So my niece daughter, my niece went to New Zealand to do her PhD. At that time, she took her daughter also. So the daughter don't know any word of English, only Tamil. But they have to send the child to the this preschool or Montessori, right? So the university itself, they will admit the child to the preschool. At that time, she don't know any word of English. She only knows Tamil. But the New Zealand preschool teachers don't know any Tamil word, only English. But to see, right, those teachers, because of this one child, right, they learn Tamil. That means not a language learning, but to manage, right, to understand what that child is asking and to direct. So the teacher used to come and write all the things, right, in the whatever the needed Tamil words, right, and they used later she picked up the English language, right? But anyway, that is also one kind of transition bilingual education because they are using mother tongue for transition to English. So every Student Success Act, there is another one, ESSA, Every Student Success Act, reauthorized and replaced the No Child Left Behind Act, continuing to support programs for English learners. It includes provisions for improving the education of students who are English learners and encourages more research into the effective bilingual and English language development programs. So when they are implementing these type of policies in language, definitely they have to face a lot of challenges, right? So one challenge is funding and resources. So bilingual education programs require additional funding for specialized teacher, curriculum development, and language resources. The same with Sri Lanka also, right? So I think World Bank funded for that. Schools in low income or rural areas often face difficulties providing this program at scale, right? So the discrimination always coming to the rural area schools. And teacher shortage, another challenge. First one, funding and resources. And the second one, teacher shortage. There is a shortage of trained bilingual educators, particularly in languages other than Spanish, such as Arabic, Mandarin, or indigenous languages. This can make it difficult to offer high quality bilingual education to all students who need it. The other challenge. And the third one, political and public opinion. Public opinion on bilingual education is often divided. Some view it as means to preserve cultural diversity and provide better educational outcomes for ELLS. Right. Another example that is also in my family, my sister's son, right? So at that time, he lived in Kilinoche. After that, riots in 1983, they displaced and went to that Kilinoche. So that is also a rural area. He studied in a close by school. So at that time, right? He neglected English because all the boys, they don't like to learn English, it seems. So that the English master is coming and teaching, but they will make various naughty things, and when the teacher, the master is teaching something, they will create joke on that, right? So anyway, the language proficiency was nil for them. I think just passed the English language, right? And he entered the university for veterinary. So what happened was, because of this language barrier, he's very good. He got 100 out of 100 in practical section, but in the theory, due to the language proficiency, he couldn't. Hello? Oh, ஒரு கிளாஸ் ஒன்ல இருக்குல்ல, நான் கொஞ்சத்துல எடுக்கவா? 9:30 எடுக்கவா? நான் பார்த்தேன். சரி. Right. Right. So he will. So they didn't offer first class for him because of the language proficiency. So at that time only he realized. He used to tell us, we neglect and we didn't study English. The sir tried so much to teach us, but we never obey that teacher, and we now only we are regretting, like, right? So language is very important. Those who are good in language only can, because our students are doing in their mother tongue. No, if they are good in mother tongue, definitely they can write the answer in a good way. Political and public opinion, while others believe it delays English proficiency and integration into American society, in states like California and Arizona, restriction on bilingual education have led to a decline in such programs. So later they decline the bilingual programs. And to see the program effectiveness, research on the effectiveness of bilingual education is mixed. While studies suggest that well-designed bilingual programs can lead to higher academic achievements and stronger language skills, right? So program effectiveness, they have done some research on that, right? So the research results is well-designed bilingual programs can lead to a higher academic achievement and strong language skills. The quality of implementation can vary widely. Because if the teachers are not qualified, the quality will be not there. Some bilingual programs may focus more on language development, right? So some are trying to do the transition, but some are teaching the language at the expense of content knowledge, leading to concerns about overall academic outcomes. So now, benefits of bilingual education. This is common to all. Even we have bilingual education in Sri Lanka. So the same benefits will be appropriate to us also. Cognitive benefits to learn. Research shows that bilingual students tend to perform better in tasks requiring cognitive flexibility, problem solving, and creativity. And cultural awareness. Bilingual education promotes cultural understanding and appreciation, which is crucial in a multicultural society like the US. Because all the ethnic people are together and they are doing bilingual education. So they socially develop this link between them, and it's like a international school, right? So they learn they respect the ethnicity, they respect the language, respect the religion, right? So in that way, there is a benefit, cultural awareness. They will know each other, culture, long-term academic success. Students in well-implemented bilingual programs tend to maintain higher academic achievements, both in their home language and English over time. And global competitiveness. In an increasingly globalized world, bilingualism is a valuable skill in the workforce, making bilingual education an asset for students' future career prospects. Right? There are benefits of bilingual education. So the conclusion is bilingual education in the US plays a crucial role in helping students from non-English speaking backgrounds succeeded academically while maintaining their cultural and linguistic heritage. Right? So that government is helping the migrants, right? They are coming from different countries and they are speaking different languages, but all are together in one class. So how we can teach that students? Right? So if they are not good in English, they can't understand English, how we can teach in English? That's what they create this bilingual education. However, its implementation is shaped by complex political, social, and economical factors. While there is growing recognition of the benefits of bilingualism, challenges related to funding, teacher shortages, and political debates continue to affect now bilingual education is provided across the country, right? So, so this is the second part. First one, language issues. Second, language policy, bilingual education in US, right? And now we are moving to Australia, right? So language issue in US, because it's a multi-ethnic country, different languages are using by those minorities. Aborigines, that means they are native people also there. They have their own language. So in that case, what they are doing is they introduce bilingual education for them, right? To help them for the English proficiency. Right. So our subject is comparative education. So whatever we learn, we used to compare, right? So now we have learned what is the language policy in America, US. Here we are going to compare that with Australia, right? Language policies and problems in Australia. So Australia also, like South Africa, that apartheid policy we learned, right? In that, so Australia also that kind of a country earlier, right? But now Australia is a linguistically diverse country, home to many languages spoken by various communities. Language problems and policies in Australia are shaped by the nation's history of migration, the legacy of British colonization, and the ongoing challenges of managing linguistic diversity in a pluralistic society. Right, so already I have told why people are migrating to these countries: Australia, US, UK, Canada. So those countries, medium of instruction, official language, one language is English. So the migrants feel easy because all have learned at least English as a second language. So they like to learn in English. That's easy for them to learn a new language and do a degree, right? So language problems and policies in Australia are shaped by the nation's history of migration. So pluralistic society. Australia's approach to language policy reflects tension between preserving indigenous languages, accommodating migrant languages, and promoting English as the dominant language. So in Australia, English is the dominant language, right? So we'll see what they are doing. Key issues in language policy in Australia. In Australia, indigenous people are there. So they have their own language. So endangerment of indigenous languages. Now, even Vedas are of an indigenous group, but they are also now like to move to this urban area, and they are sending their children to learn in that school, right? So what happened was their native language is endangered. It's in danger because they are going to forget all. The children are going to speak normal language. So Australia is a home to a rich linguistic heritage with over 250 indigenous languages, once spoken across the continent. However, many of these languages are now endangered, with only a handful spoken by younger generation. So earlier they had 250, now they lost most of the languages, indigenous languages. Native languages, the old people, that means the first generation people, right? So you'd have seen Red Indians. That is also one indigenous group. So revitalization efforts, they have been growing efforts to revitalize indigenous languages, including community-based programs, academic research, and government support for language preservation. However, challenges remain in terms of resources, intergeneration, and transmission, and to dominance of English. So maybe indigenous languages are a little bit difficult, right? So even in Tamil language, when we are learning, right, the poetry and the grammar, those things are very difficult. We can't understand the poems, what they have written in those days. It's very hard to understand, right? So language have to be very easy, right? Later, Bharadiyar came, right? So he used very simple language. So that type of songs is very popular among all because all can understand, right? And the olden these poetry and things, it's very difficult to remember, right? Here what happened was the indigenous languages, right? Normally these old things are very it's like gold, right? Even in Sri Lanka, they are keeping most of the places, especially sacred places, in the same way as but they're not doing any this, they're not going to change anything because they like to keep as it is, right? So culturally, they need that. The historical things are there. So ancient cities, right? Polonnaruwa, Anuradhapura, you can see. So how the kings ruled the country and how their palace. So those things they like to keep. That's actually it's a heritage, like, right? They used to call as heritage, and they wanted to keep that. It is give richness for the country. And migration and multiculturalism. Post World War II migration, since World War II, Australia has experienced significant immigration, particularly from non-English speaking countries in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. So this has led to a multicultural society where multiple languages are spoken, with Italian, Greek, Mandarin, Arabic, Cantonese, and Vietnamese being among the most common. So even our people started the migration after 83 riots. At that time, UK gave these chances to migrate to that country, right? So the Australia after World War, they gave some room to move to that country. So the Italian, Greek, Mandarin, Arabic, Cantonese, and Vietnamese have moved to that place, right, after World War. So now it is a multicultural setup. Language maintenance versus assimilation. Australia's language policies have fluctuated between encouraging and maintenance of heritage languages and promoting the assimilation of migrants into English-speaking mainstream society. Anyway, they are giving preference to English, right? So slowly they are changing, right, everyone to the mainstream. The challenge is balancing respect for linguistic diversity with the practical need for English proficiency. So in Australia, English as the national language. So English dominance. English is the de facto official language of Australia, used in government, education, business, and media. The government and many institutions encourage migrants to learn English, both for practical reasons like finding employment and for social integration. So without English, you can't work there, right? So you have to learn English, right? That program is still going on in UK. My sister, also sister and husband, that family moved to UK, right, during these 83 riots. So my sister is not good in English, so they have classes for the migrants, right? They are conducting classes free of charge. That means they want the migrants to speak English. So issues arise, language proficiency and social integration. While English proficiency is essential for success in Australia, issues arise when migrants and refugees struggle with English language acquisition, which can lead to social exclusion, educational disadvantage, and difficulty assessing services. Right, so these UK, Australia, even New Zealand also have these indigenous people also, but their official language also English. But they are not entertaining migrants. Right? That's what it's very cold, and so the job opportunities are less, right? So people like to migrate to UK because they can earn a lot. There are a lot of part-time jobs available, but now that is also in risk, it seems, after economic crisis. Okay, so language policies in Australia. National language policy. Australia does not have an official language law, but English is widely recognized as the working language. However, Australia has embraced multiculturalism, which includes support for the linguistic diversity brought by immigration. So there's no official national language, right? But working language is English. The National Policy on Languages in 1987 was a landmark document that recognized the linguistic diversity of the country and emphasized the importance of supporting both English proficiency and the maintenance of community languages. So they don't want to lose these native languages also, right? So they are maintaining both. Working language, of course, in English, they are giving support for these native languages also, community languages. The policy proposed that government support languages through education, media, and social service. So even in Australia, they had bilingual education programs available in some areas, especially in schools, with high number of students from non-English speaking background. These programs often focus on teaching English as a second language, while also allowing students to maintain their home language. So, however, bilingual education is not universally available, and debates about the effectiveness and cost of such program continue. There are also challenges in ensuring that children from indigenous and migrant backgrounds receive adequate language support. So they have formulated indigenous language policy because they are losing the indigenous languages. Earlier they had 250 and slowly it is reducing. So in recent years, there has been growing recognition of the importance of preserving and revitalizing indigenous languages. The Indigenous Language Act 2021, very recent one, is a part of Australia's commitment to improving outcomes for indigenous communities, focusing on the preservation of languages as an essential part of cultural heritage. So already it reduces a lot, but recently they realize they have to have those indigenous languages also. However, there is a gap between policy goals and actual outcomes, and indigenous languages remain at risk due to the dominance of English and the lack of institutional support. So even indigenous people also want to learn English because the working language is English and the schools are mostly medium of instruction is English. So they want their children to learn English. So they lose, and the younger generation, they don't know the indigenous, even their mother tongue. Language and citizenship. In some instances, language proficiency in English has been tied to citizenship requirements. In 2007, the English language requirement for Australian citizenship was tightened. Requirement migrants to pass an English language test. So IELTS test, right? So when if you want to migrate, if you want to do any higher studies, you have to pass that exam. That means they are checking your English proficiency because they are going to teach you in English, right? They need English proficiency paper. So to the Australian citizenship, they need English language. They have to pass the exam, English language exam. Critics argue that this can exclude migrants who may have lived in Australia for many years but are not proficient in English due to age, disability, or lack of opportunity for language learning. So these type of indigenous people or other community people, sometimes they don't know English, right? So they can't pass this exam. So they have to, so they are losing that community. And challenges in Australia's language policy, barriers to access. So non-English speakers, particularly migrants and refugees, can face challenges in accessing public service, healthcare, and education, especially if they lack proficiency in English. Language barriers often contribute to social exclusion, affecting integration into Australian society. So, so their policy is working policy is English. So barriers to access. If they are not good in English, they can't. Especially non-English speakers will face a lot of difficulties, especially refugees, right? And discrimination. People who speak languages other than English may experience discrimination or stigmatization, particularly in contexts where English proficiency is viewed as a measure of assimilation or national identity. So even in Sri Lanka, this will experience after 5 to 10 years, because now the international schools are functioning. So most of the people, that means affordable people, wants their children to be there and they are learning in English, right? And the private sector and the working force, right? They are expecting English speaking people. So job opportunities will go to them, not for the rural children who are learning in mother tongue, right? So the same discrimination is in Australia also. And the other thing is indigenous language loss, right? Earlier they had 250 and now very few languages are there. The loss of indigenous languages remains a significant issue. The effects of colonization, forced assimilation policies, such as stolen generation and the dominance of English in education, media and public life have led to the decline of indigenous languages. They're not using, schools are not using, right? So children coming to school is going to use English, so they will forget the indigenous language. Even think of our children, those who migrate to these English countries like UK, Australia, Canada, France, even France, they have to learn French, right? So now they can't speak Tamil because they are learning in English from the small age. They are learning English, so they don't like to the culture, language, everything lost, right? The gap between the recognition of the importance of language preservation and the resources available for it remains a critical challenge. And the resource allocation to preserve the language and funding and support, providing adequate resources for bilingual education, language revitalization programs, and translation service for migrants requires significant investment. In a climate of budget cuts and competing priorities, the effectiveness of Australia's language policies depends on sustained government support. According to the situation environment, it's changing. So as a conclusion of Australian language policy, is a pluralistic society reflect its complex social and historical context, where issues of migration, even in US also the same migration problem, cultural identity and social inclusion intersect. The challenge lies in managing linguistic diversity while ensuring that all Australians have access to opportunities, service, and rights, regardless of their language background, while progress has been made, particularly in terms of recognizing the value of multiculturalism and the importance of indigenous language preservation. Ongoing work is required to address the gaps in language education, resource allocation, and social integration. That is the conclusion of Australian thing. Now the third country, Russia, right? So after learning these three only, we can discuss what are the differences between these language policies. What are the issues, whether it is similar or different, right? Is there any similarity between the issues or differences are there? We can discuss. So Russia is also a multi-ethnic country. Indigenous minority population in Russia face a range of social, political, economic, and cultural changes, many of which stem for the country's vast geographical diversity. Historical policies and the ongoing pressures of modernization, industrialization, and globalization. So this is also one reason indigenous people will move to this modernization, industrialization. So they come to work in the this urban area. So they switch on to the urban areas language and everything. So they lost their own language. So there are Saka, Tuans, Buryats, Chuki, Evenki, Ninets. There are ethnic groups like they are in the Siberian regions. Despite being an integral part of Russia's rich cultural mosaic, this group continue to struggle with significant issues related to land rights, cultural preservation, language loss, economic marginalization, and political representation, right? So key problems, language loss, we learned under Australia also, right? And cultural assimilation also the same. And loss of traditional lands. So indigenous group in Russia often face encroachment of their ancestral lands by industries such as oil, gas, mining, logging, and large-scale agriculture. So the indigenous people are in the village side now. So these type of industrializations, the factories will be there. So they are encroaching the land of indigenous people. So that means, right, they are going to, so think of Sri Lanka, right? So why the universities are establishing in a very rural area, interior area, so that side will develop, right? So likewise here, industrialization means people going to have jobs, and so it will be developing. Environmental degradation, so definitely environmental degrade, because they are going to cut the trees and they are going to put up buildings, industrial, the chemicals will be going to the land part, right? So the environmental and lack of recognition of land rights. So while Russia's constitution guarantees the rights of indigenous people, including their right to preserve their traditions and use their lands, in practice, these rights are often not upheld. Indigenous people often lack legal recognition of their tradition, territories, or have difficulty asserting land claims in court. Even in Sri Lanka, right, the lot of lands are owned by government, right? So encroaching, sometimes if that's true, people encroach, sometimes the government will give that, or they're not going to give, right? Economic marginalization, poverty and unemployment, inadequate social services, government support. So that is also similar to Australia. And political underrepresentation and legal challenges, limited political representation. So indigenous people are not educated. So there's no political power. So indigenous group have limited influence on policy decision. In Brazil, only elite people can vote. They are the people who educated. All the others, those who can't read and write, illiterate people can't vote. Right? So in that way, even here, the limited political representation is there. And legal changes, indigenous communities often face significant obstacle when trying to assert their rights in court. So normally it's happening now, right? Those who are not knowledgeable, very poor people, village people, definitely there is a discrimination. And health and well-being, poor health outcomes, indigenous population, alcoholism and substance abuse. So many indigenous communities in Russia face severe problems with alcoholism and substance abuse, which have been exacerbated by historical trauma, economical hardship, and the disintegration of traditional social structures. Even in Sri Lanka, in upcountry, right, the people are working for more than 12 hours, right, so they have to pluck the tea leaves, right? So hard work, they have to climb up the mountain under the hot sun. So the British people have put up taverns for them. So whatever they earn from the work, they will spend by using alcohol, right? So in that way, alcoholism and substance abuse is also there. And mental health, the trauma caused by historical politics of forced assimilation land loss and cultural suppression has had lasting effects on the mental health of indigenous population. So increased rates of suicide, depression and anxiety are prevalent in many remote communities. So they are not happy. And so they realize the discrimination, and they even their own things also not, they can't own by them. So mentally, they are not well. And climate change and environmental vulnerability. So indigenous people are living in the interior area, not in the urban side. So Arctic and Siberia, so vulnerable to effects of climate change, changing temperatures, melting permafrost, changing migration patterns of animals are disrupting traditional livelihoods. So due to this climate change, they are facing a lot of problems. And resource exploitation and environmental damage. So for the indigenous community in Russia, they more than other countries, they are facing a lot of problems because of environmental climate change. And discrimination and social exclusion, racism and stereotyping. Indigenous people in Russia often face discrimination and marginalization in society. They are sometimes stereotyped as backward or primitive and can be excluded from mainstream Russian society, particularly in urban areas. So I think last time I told Dalit caste in India earlier, not now. So they also excluded in everything. They are not offered any job. They can't go to good schools, right? So they have to be backward or primitive, and so the like a municipality job, that means so those job only, so for that people, right? So racism and stereotyping. The social exclusion can further limit their access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. Loss of traditional identity, the pressure to assimilate into Russian society often leads to a loss of traditional identity and cultural practices. Indigenous youth especially face the challenges of balancing their traditional heritage with the need to integrate into a more modern and economically successful Russian society. And government international responses. So while the Russian government has taken some steps to address the issue faced by indigenous communities, the effectiveness of these efforts remain matter of debate. So government is taking some action, but even for that, there are a lot of barriers. Russian Federation 1999 Law of Indigenous People provides legal protection for the cultural, economic, and social right. International pressure also there. International organizations such as UNA, United Nations, and the International Labour Organization have called on Russia to improve the situation of its indigenous people. So for that, ILO Convention number 169 formulated. So they have started indigenous advocacy group. So you can compare, right? Now the UK, Australia, Russia. So Russia, indigenous people facing a lot of problem, right? The other indigenous people, very few, that means less percentage of people, but they are they're losing their heritage and they are mixing with urban people. And government is also promoting English as a working language, right? So Russia's situation is something different, right? So they're not look after the indigenous people and they are suffering, and the climate changing, environmental issues, everything is there. So the conclusion, indigenous minority population in Russia face a complex set of challenges rooted in historical, ongoing policies of assimilation, exploitation, and marginalization. While there have been some efforts to address these issues, including legal recognition of rights and the promotion of cultural preservation, significant gaps remain. To address the problem facing indigenous communities, Russia will need to take strong action to ensure that indigenous people's rights are respected and their languages are and cultures are protected. So Australia is trying to help indigenous people and preserve their languages, right? Even in UK is the same, but here the situation is something different, right? So here indigenous people number is more and they are facing a lot of challenges, right? So we learned 3 countries, right? UK, not UK, US, Australia, and Russia, right? That means language issues. Why language issues is coming? Because of the multi-ethnicity, right? So especially they are talking about minorities, right? So and indigenous people, of course, always minorities, and their language is different. So they are facing a lot of challenges, right? So now we have learned 3 countries, and we have to compare with Sri Lanka. So I have made some slides for that also, right? We also have minority. And what are the problems the minority people face? So here, indigenous people, how they are suffering. Even in Australia, indigenous people are suffering, right? That means facilities are not providing. US also the same. In the US, black people are there. They are minorities, right? They came like slaves. So the Indian, the upcountry people brought for the working force, no? The same with the US, the blacks went there as slaves, right? So their generation is also there, right? So now what you have to do is you read your module under language issue. So you will get more idea, right? The basic things are here and you have to read that language issue chapter, 3rd chapter. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. If you have any clarification, if you have any issues, you can ask. So the comparative education means that is the way, right? So we have to compare everything. The last time, in the 2nd chapter, so how the people are treating in different countries in different way. We learned here. We are talking about minorities and the countries indigenous, the minority people, and what are the challenges they are facing, right? So in that way, we have to think of our country also, because our country also have minorities, and what are the challenges faced by minorities in Sri Lanka, right? In that way, you have to think. Right. So thank you very much for participation. Is there any issues or anything? Any clarifications? I think in the later part only, we are going to compare the education of countries. Okay, that will be more interesting. And this is also, we need to know. We don't know much about what is happening in other countries. So this is related to education. Language means without language, we can't learn, right? So basic is language. So what are the issues in language? So we have learned most developed countries, right? United States, Russia, and Australia. So they have a lot of issues, right? Right, okay, good night. We'll meet in the next class.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Good night.